everyone, and welcome to China EVs and More, where my co-host Lei Jun and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the global EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. And to our loyal listeners, welcome back. We ask that you help us please get the word out about this podcast to other enthusiasts, and of course, tune in again next week. My name is Tu Li. I'm the managing director at Sino Auto Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. Lei, just back from New York City, Lei, can you please introduce yourself?
Good morning to a first-time cruiser, tanned, head burnt, yes. This is your co-host Lei Jun, former chief editor of China Auto Review, and this is episode number 159, a Good Friday, pre-Easter, end of the quarter edition of China EVs and More. And certainly, Lei Jun had a good Thursday, I must say. And we go right into the Xiaomi SU7 launch.
So, is it SU7 or is it SU7? It's SU.
Either way, he calls it SU7. They might as well change the SU to the Chinese character Su, which means speed.
Yes. Sudu, right? So.
Yeah, and it's the Xiaomi speed, basically.
Even before we get into talking about the event and the announcement, it's cool to see there's still people getting excited about new products, and that kind of reinforces the Xiaomi brand. And the fact that he had Li Bin, Li Xiang, and He Xiaopeng in the front row, love that support. They want to crush each other in the business room, but to have that kind of support is really, really cool to me.
So first of all, my comment is Lei Jun is a showman, number one. He's a marketing guru. So bring those three CEOs from Wei Xiaoli, and then also right before the launch, he and Wei Jianjun, who's the founder of Great Wall Motor, they swapped each other a tank. I think it was the Tank 700 Hi4T, they're kind of the plug-in model with the SU7. So they gave gifts to each other. So it's all a pageantry, it's all a commotion, it's all the brotherlyhood. That's all part of the Lei Jun's showmanship.
More broadly, it's a celebration of Chinese entrepreneurs.
Yes. And that's exactly, I think, the significance. Let's not talk about the EV because Xiaomi is one of the, really a national champion, I would say, of a brand, entrepreneurialism, a feel-good story of how a brand was, it's a decade old, just a little bit more than a decade old.
I don't know anyone in China that didn't have a Xiaomi product.
And you and I, having lived in China for many years, I'm sure we were already in that ecosystem with a bunch of appliances.
I had a TV, purifier.
Yeah, I mean, for quite a few years, it was basically Xiaomi 同学, the what do you call it? The 小爱, I'm sorry. Yeah. That it's a wake up command, right? To operate the lights, to operate the whatever, right?
And remember, I lived in Shimao, so there was a Xiaomi store right next to the Jordan store in Shimao Tianjie. And for those that are wondering, some of you might have seen a big space with like an overhead platform with a huge screen on one end. That's in downtown Beijing, CBD. The area is called Shimao Tianjie. It's right across the street from Xinchuan Guoji, which is one of the more famous Beijing foreign residence compounds. And I live right next door. So every day, walk over across Shimao Tianjie to grab a coffee. And guess what? I'd stop in the Xiaomi store to see what they had.
Yeah.
Never really, they didn't, every once in a while they had something new, but it wasn't like every day. So,
Yeah. So first, his marketing guru, his showmanship, showman, and second, I think Lei Jun is a quick learner. Meaning, if you look at his the way he carries himself, the way he does launch events, is very Apple-ish. And this brand aura that Xiaomi has, the way Xiaomi's, they don't have that brand aura because it's a Xiaomi. So I think ahead, I mean, this run up, this lead up, 3 years in the making, 3 months in the making. Every day there's rumors about pricing. There's rumors about type of features, the tech. And I actually, I mean, a lot of people, I got tired watching the live stream because he spent 2 hours just talking about, the other stuff that was, I think everybody knew pretty much.
so I'm texting back and forth between you and three other people at the event. And one of them rhetorically asked me, I wonder how much they paid for this event because it was grand. So this is a turning point for Xiaomi. And one thing that I will say, Lei, is that Xiaomi is one of the true international Chinese companies. They're growing in Europe, they're growing in Africa and certain parts of Southeast Asia.
Let me stop you. Just one statistic. They are the number 3 smartphone maker in the world in terms of shipments. 641 million. I'm not sure if it was the smartphone or the devices. I believe it was the smartphone in the world right now, Xiaomi. So continue.
And someone that many Americans probably have seen on TV, Shou Zichu, the current TikTok CEO.
TikTok,
He used to be the head of Xiaomi International, and he lived in Beijing for a while. So,
yeah.
Not sure any of you listeners knew that, but Shou Zichu, he was a private equity guy in Singapore, moved to Beijing to be the head of international for Xiaomi, left after a couple of years to take the TikTok role. So,
and number 3, if we're speaking of this, TikTok social media, I mean, look at how active Lei Jun is on X.
On X.
I know they have a team running it, but still, there's no other China EV Inc. CEO that's, I mean, he's basically now the CEO of the EV because he gave the responsibilities of the other parts of it to the other guy, William, I think. So, I mean, right, nobody's more active than him on social media.
Well, the other thing too, Lei, is already on China social media, we see videos of broken down SU7s. So there's already potential dunking going on.
Yeah, and I say less than maybe, 24 hours into the launch, the narratives are already changing.
The fangs are starting to come out. The fangs are starting to come out.
Yeah. So we saw that poster. I think the latest number was 90,000 orders, firm orders in 81 minutes. It's unheard of. It's more than their capacity, I think. I don't know what their plant capacity is right now. At most 100,000 units. And
we all know that billionaires can be very petty. So if one gets more attention than another, there's a lot of ego there. And so
yeah, and William and Lei Jun putting out a video, and William's like, how am I gonna price the envelope?
Yeah.
Like these things, it's funny seeing these. It's kind of the dynamic.
Well, you also know, Lei, that they went there to do their own homework, to kick the tires, to talk to Lei Jun, find out what they could. Hey, what's your forecast for 2024? Hey, where are you going to have retail stores? Where are you planning on selling them? Blah, 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 right?
Let's talk about the pricing a little bit. And I'm going to pat myself on the back because I said early in the year review that I cannot imagine it to be priced above renminbi 300,000. And voila, their top trim, the Max, is 299. So what do you think? I mean, was it your expectations?
So objectively, the pricing shouldn't be surprising because it's been rumored for a long time. But yes, the 300,000 for the top end is, I think, For the features, it seemed like a reasonable price, but the 300 seems like in the current conditions of the price war, probably a little bit high. But what you get is a lot of value. You get the 800 volt platform versus the 400 volt platform. You get some like 0 to 60 in like 2.7 seconds, stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Well, that 400 platform is actually one of the sticking points. I think there's some will argue that it's old because all of
Yes.
these new EV models coming out having 800 volt models. I think the max version is the 800 volt model, but I mean it was a matter of whether you start the pricing below 200,000 or you have the top trim over 300,000, and neither was the case. But he did say that the night before they discussed for an hour, and he decided that they will price it 30,000 RMB below the Model 3. By the way, another meme, 比 Model 3低 after almost said 比 Model Y 棒 after BYD said 比电比油低. I mean, all of these memes are coming out, and then the Galaxy E8 said 八比七. Like this is just crazy.
So I'll try to be Lei's Fanyi or his translator. B means compared to or relative. So there's been some memes out there about BYD with electric being cheaper than oil, with Neo on one of their new prototypes. The back window said compare better than a Model 3. And so I think these are all fun, all in jest. I think it's hilarious. And they're very catchy in Chinese. So why not?
Yeah, it's all part of the marketing showman that's gotten out of, crazier by the day. So
I'm really excited to see, and I don't think it'll be very intuitive at the very beginning, Lei, but you and I had talked about in the very beginning the ecosystem and the platform, the Me Life, and how one app kind of controls everything on the consumer side. Now, they also sell tablets and laptops. And so this is what I believe Apple really wanted. Xiaomi knows what entertains us because they sell TVs. They know what we work on because they sell laptops. They know what our living rooms, kitchens are like because they sell rice cookers, they sell air purifiers. And so this is the final frontier. And I've written in my newsletter, they are now the most mobility forward technology company in the world. It was a title that I think everybody wanted to give to Apple, but Apple never came through. And then they finally, a couple of weeks ago, raised the white flag on the Apple car. And so how they integrate everything together is going to be really, really interesting for me to see and exciting. So
yeah, I think we saw some of that in the launch and some of the reviews afterwards. One of the things they can do is not only could you bring a Xiaomi pad, but you can bring your iPad into the vehicle and kind of have it as a second row screen, which they are offering as an option package. A little bit overkill, but the fact that you can do that is part of that ecosystem play, right? And then basically operating the vehicle at home on your pad, pre-condition the vehicle, temperature, AC, all that stuff, right? And then kind of the seamless, whatever you have on your phone, seamless transitioning into the vehicle. We'll have to see. I guess the challenge is really how, we haven't talked about the ramp up production quality. The first people that'll take deliveries and after 3 to 6 months of owning it, what kind of feedback, positive or negative, that Xiaomi will get. I think that's part of the next near-term challenge. I mean, those numbers, order numbers, you take it with a grain of salt, right? But there's no doubt, I think in my mind, this EV will compete. But it's after that they're actually in customer hands. And we've heard stories of how the first models of the first brand, more often than not, they will
have some bugs.
Right? So we're probably going to see those pop up, in the coming months. So
where I think the Xiaomi brand will push through some of those challenges that's where I think these new brands that you had kind of mentioned, how they have become very ubiquitous in China, they're still are searching for or trying to build that trust that Xiaomi already has. And Xiaomi has trust across customer segments. So, like children, old people, young people. So, it's a strong, strong brand in China for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And so I think
And
they'll be forgiven for some of those lumps and those bugs if they can quickly resolve them or even go a step further and delight the customer by fixing it and doing the right thing.
and Lei Jun, I mean, he himself saying this is the last startup of his career, and he's putting in $10 billion over the 10 years, next 10 years. And I mean, he's committed. He gave up his other responsibilities. I mean, he's almost like he's a William, he's a Li Xiang, he's a He Xiaofeng, right? Because he's now fully into it. And we'll see.
So
I mean,
I'm doing a presentation for a private group next week. One of the final slides that I just thought up and worked on this morning because I need to send the draft over was a picture of a Chevy Bolt and the picture of the Xiaomi and a couple boxes comparing some of the specs with the title of the slide being what you can buy for $30,000. And obviously I put a US flag where the Chevy Bolt is, and I put a Chinese flag where the Xiaomi SU7 is. So this, if there was any doubt that they're creating amazing things in China, that should be put to rest. The other thing, really quickly, Lei, that I'll say is that I tweeted Xiaomi has lowered the floor even further on EVs in China while simultaneously raising the stakes for the global automakers.
Yes, yes. I think it's more so than the more so on the global automakers. Now, let's talk about the three trims themselves. To be honest, they're great. They're very competitive. But they're not the best out of comparable models. For example,
No, they're not.
right? The Zeekr 001 Mi edition is also priced at $299 and have similar, if not better, features. So it's not like they're besting every other EV model on the market. So that's one thing. And the other thing was some of the things I didn't like, especially the current way how I think that slide I tweeted about being the best whatever, best under the 500,000 renminbi. I don't really like that type of marketing because it comes back and bites you. And it happened to Mega. And the fact that said Lei Jun was a quick learner, that's one of the things he learned from Richard Yu and Li Xiang, because they were the ones started out that kind of quip or that kind of marketing messages, which it's
like pushing the envelope.
I don't really like, to be honest. So
but it's kind of where the market is going. That's kind of you got to make those bold statements in order to stand out, I guess.
And he did. I think he did even say in the launch event that we're gonna beat Porsche. I don't know by what metric. He said, in a few years.
Well, he wants to be a top 5 automaker.
Yeah.
And we've already seen rumors that by the end of this year, they're going to be launching an SUV. And so I think this points to the pressure of working with BAIC to make sure that they get enough orders to fill the factory that they have contract manufactured with BAIC. Now, this is also a product of how fast the China market moves. And where Lei Jun has an advantage is that as he was developing this vehicle, he saw how fast it was moving. So he could adjust on the fly his product plan, his pricing plan, because one of the things that'll likely happen, Lei, and I think you'd agree with this, is that I think within 6 to 8 months, he'll probably convert all 3 trims to the 800 volt platform.
Yeah, and that Pro trim was added later on because if you remember when they launched on the Tech Day, announced on the Tech Day, they only had the Standard and the Max. The Pro is obviously added later on. But in summary, I guess it's a vehicle that's kind of, Porsche tech wannabe, but at the Model 3 pricing or lower than Model 3 pricing. So that's how I feel.
So here's the thing about, to your point about how these bold proclamations might turn around and bite them in the ass. Now, let me qualify this, because most Chinese buyers of a Taycan probably don't take it out to the track. They probably don't push it to its limits. But if you're comparing yourself to Porsche, now the speed part, 0 to 60, seems okay, 2.78. But does it do everything that a Porsche is built to do?
Yeah.
That remains to be seen. Okay. And because where I think what you're trying to say is that he can't be everything to everybody on this first go around. And he's made a lot of really, really bold statements. And he's a pretty humble guy. At least he's never really been that chest thumping about Xiaomi. That, with certain mobile phones and handsets, yes. But generally, he's pretty humble.
And the fact that he said, I thought something was interesting, was the reason we priced the SU7 at 30,000 RMB below the Model 3 was out of respect for Tesla. It's hard to understand, right? From I mean, how? Yeah.
It's weird because the presentation, he was like, I leaned on Wei Xiaoli to give me advice.
Make mistakes.
Yeah.
Also. Yeah.
And so I think he's also trying to disarm everybody so that they can't, he's just a jerk because he said this. And so I think he's trying to position Xiaomi as like the likable EV brand a little bit. So it'll be exciting to be back in Beijing because that's where Xiaomi is headquartered. There will likely be a lot of SU7s driving around on purpose.
Well, the first deliveries began
April 5th.
At the end of April. Yeah.
No, well, so the Founders editions are supposed to be delivered
April.
First week of April.
Yeah.
So, and you had alluded to 20,000 RMB worth of freebies.
I looked at that and said, and the order page, it's actually counted in toward the final pricing. So without those freebies, the 2159 would be like 23 something. So that's how it is. Yeah. So, and
I'd mentioned that at 290 whatever, it's just under $30,000. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that was also like USD wise, and I think they're going to aggressively try to export this pretty quickly. It's just, we know that there's a ton of overcapacity. We know that there's a price war going on. The price war will go away, but the intense competition will not. And there's way, way too many brands to create a price premium, at least among the Chinese brands, because I just don't see a ton of separation with how fast they're coming out with new features, updated specs, new trims every 6 to 8 months. And this is where Xiaomi should shine too, because they already have that back end and infrastructure in place. Now, putting it into vehicles is a completely different animal and product, but the back end should be the exact same. So it's not like, okay, we got to build a front end and a back end. You guess what? We're just integrating the software into our current ecosystem and infrastructure. And what I really think that they have an advantage over all the legacies in some of the EV companies is their ability to analyze and crunch that data in order to try to create new services, revenue, and new features.
And that's the question remaining, is because on paper, whatever they presented, the smartification, the batteries using all CATL, right? Chilean and Shenzhen, the plants, the manufacturing on paper, they're all good. But does that translate to, in terms of deliveries, which we can probably guesstimate a little bit? I mean, what would be a success for Xiaomi SU7 on a, let's say not even monthly, but a quarterly delivery point of view? Now, Lixiang delivers 100,000 units. They expect, well, they cut that, and NIO cut that as well. But I'd imagine 10,000, at least 10,000 a month would be a minimum for this model to
At
call
the
it a
end of by
success.
the end of this quarter.
Yeah. Well, by the end of April
Oh,
or May. Let's say May.
yeah, because I think it would take probably at least a couple of months to ramp properly. So
Which is the other question, how fast they can ramp.
one
I
thing
mean,
that I will say, and maybe we can close the book on this
yeah,
because we're talking about for half an hour, is that there's a fine line between creating stickiness and a terrific, compelling user experience and being intrusive.
that's the thing.
And I think Chinese consumers in general, because they're younger, they trend younger, they're more digitally savvy. I think what we would take as intrusive, they might embrace. But Xiaomi, part of my excitement and kind of waiting to see is how they create that user experience with everything that they have. Because is it going to be a Xiaomi Life outside the car and then Xiaomi SU7 experience? How will they integrate that so that it creates a really compelling UX and everybody's excited about it versus, wow, okay, this is way too much and I need to kind of step away. I think they're probably the best suited to really push that envelope without being intrusive.
Yeah.
So
But
let's move to New York, man. Oh, do you have anything else?
no, I just think that with kind of dynamics in China, I think over the coming days we'll hear more different takes or different narratives come out for the SU7. It always is that way after
Good and
this
bad.
kind
Good and
of
bad.
brouhaha, right? Good and bad, yeah. So let's move over to New York. Yes.
Yeah. Let's go, man.
So I was in New York on Wednesday to attend the New York Auto Show. This was my third time straight year actually going over it because it's close enough I can drive over. The headline going into this year's New York Auto Show was that not only one but two Chinese models made it into the top three finalists of the World Car of the Year awards, the BYD Seal and Dolphin. Unfortunately, they did not win. And one of the telltale signs in the morning at the award ceremony was they had this display of the three finalists, the Kia EV9, which won the award, two awards, the EX30, which won the Urban Car of the Year, beating the Dolphin, and the BYD Seal wasn't there. It was a roll-up banner. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, that's not a good omen. And the Kia EV9, for the third straight year, the Korean brands just crushing it in that award voting, third straight year.
And that's not to say they don't deserve it. It's just
right. So not taking credit away, right, from the Korean brands. They're on a roll. I mean, there's nobody stopping. But in retrospect, I think the fact that BYD two models made it into the top three, I think is already a historical achievement. And I talked to Siddharth, who is the one of the jurors, and he's also the chair of the World Car of the Year Awards. And he actually tested the Seal on the morning of the Geneva Motor Show, and he announced the top three, which included the Seal. And he said, and I talked to him a little bit afterward, that in many ways, how democratizing new age vehicles have been, and with the EVs, there's opportunity, but it's not just the EVs, and I don't think we're very far away, maybe, from having the Chinese brands win. So it's a sign of times.
Honestly, dude, this is the thing, right? BYD is a great car, but there are some amazing cars that Western consumers are likely not going to be able to see.
Yeah. And to tell the truth, this award, I felt like it was a little bit North American centric.
Little Western bias.
Yeah. But I mean, the requirement was that 2/3 of the 100 or so jurors had to have driven the car, and this car has to be on sale in two countries in two different continents with sales of at least 10,000 units. So, anyways, I think it's a historical for any Chinese brands models to be even in the top three. So it's already a win, but I think it's a matter of time that they'll
Especially
win
if
eventually.
they can come to the United States affordably somehow, some way.
And he also said he's Indian. He's from India. He said that CEO just launched in India, and even prices quite well given the high taxation in India and the dolphins in India as well.
I think there's
So
a
yeah,
25 or 35% tariff or lift, 40% lift.
yeah.
It's significant. And that was one of the reasons Tesla didn't import into India. But that's likely going to happen before the end of the
So
year.
that was one of the kind of the highlights or China factor in New York. And the other one was during lunchtime, there was this little conference. And Mike Stanton, the president of NADA, the National Automobile Dealers Association, he gave some statistics about dealership in the US trying to sell vehicles, including EVs. And he said there's about 60,000 dealers in the US. They have 6 billion worth of inventory in dealer lots. And they've spent 6 billion to get ready to sell and service EVs. But he said the incentives are not sufficient, the charging is not there, and the affordability is an issue. We need a mass market vehicle. It's not there yet. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, well, who can provide that for the next 12 to 18 months? It's only the Chinese brands, but they're cut off. That's the other, kind of the China factor.
I'm likely really unfair to US dealers, but
Yeah.
in general, they suck. They are the least customer friendly sales group of any product that I've ever, and it's an expensive product. It's not a cheap product. So there should be patience. There should be knowledgeable. They should be, follow up. But there's a reason that used car salesman has a negative connotation, or car salesman has a negative connotation. And so I think it's well earned. But the retail experience, but let me separate my subjective opinion to the objective facts that I agree with him, and I agree with what you just said. Now, the bridge still could be hybrids, but that's where the US 3 or the Detroit 3 are still ass out. Well, with the exception of Stellantis, because the Jeep was one of the best-selling hybrids in the US in 2023.
Yeah, the 4XEs, 4xEs, yeah.
So, and GM is probably a good 24, 30 months away from launching any type of hybrid of quality. And so this is where some of the decisions that they made are coming to bite them in the ass. And then you had tweeted that GM is in discussions, or CATL is in discussions with GM to license their technology to build a factory in North America. And this goes back to my event I went to in late December, the fireside chat with Mary Barra, where I asked her, can you give us more detail on your battery strategy? And she flatly said no. And so my assumption, my question in my mind was, well, how do you reconcile being able to sell all these EVs without using Chinese batteries? And now it seems like we have our answer.
Yeah. Well, whether it's going to be smooth or not, that's a different question. But at least it's out there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you've talked about this LFP, the US Big Three, having to go to LFP, if not already, many times, right? And who can provide the LFP is the Chinese, CATL specifically. Yeah.
And for those that think that the Japanese and Koreans can quickly learn how to build LFP, they're wrong. It takes time.
Yeah.
So they don't have the capacity and they don't have the experience. Okay.
And the third China factor was Polestar actually chose to exhibit at the New York Auto Show. Interesting enough, they had a simple stand. They had a LED backboard and basically the 3 and the 4 there. It's very simple.
Was there a lot of traffic around the
Yeah,
three?
there was a lot of traffic, and basically an announcement of the pricing for the Polestar 4, 54,900, the long range single motor edition. Delivery starts in Q4. So I mean, and they're trying to start production of the 3, which is a higher price. I think it was like $73,000 in South Carolina, right? So it's a pseudo kind of the Chinese brand, owned brand again, coming to the US, right? And the fourth China factor is kind of related with Polestar as well, is Eve was a surprising exhibitor, but they were exhibiting in the basement where the EV test track was. And I talked to some of their people, and they said, "Well, it's just it's our first time exhibiting in the U.S. and just to kind of show our products and get some feedback from the market." And
Oh, that's not right, is it? They were at the battery show, weren't they?
well, the battery show, but that was not specifically the EV batteries. Yeah,
Okay.
good caveat. But specifically, they showed the LFP, NCM, cylindrical,
Okay.
prismatic, and the other one. All three different form factors. And at the Polestar booth, one of their senior VPs, which was a foreigner, walked up straight to Thomas Ingenlath and basically said, "We want your business." that was funny.
Thomas Ingenlath is the CEO of Polestar.
Thomas, yeah, that was pretty blunt. I'll send you a picture.
So what you and I think agree on is that Polestar is probably a little bit overpriced, and they're both, the 3 and the 4 are probably a bit overpriced. They're probably not differentiating themselves from the Volvo brand well enough. And so I think there's going to be probably a little bit of cannibalism between Volvo and Polestar when the EX9 comes out. But yeah, I thought about going to New York because I love going to New York, and I just need an excuse sometimes. But with the cruise and everything, I just couldn't make it this time. So
yeah, and then the fifth China factor was, well, it's an indirect China factor. It was visiting the Rivian space in New York, and it's about a mile down from where the show was. So I took a walk down, wasn't bad. And checking out the R2, and I gotta be honest with you, I think it's on the top of the list if I were to purchase my next car. I think I fell in love with the R2. It's perfectly sized.
Well, you fell in love with the R1 when you were in LA two years ago.
No, R1 is too big.
No, but I remember you really liked it.
I know I liked it, but R2 is just, I think the size wise is just perfect. Like,
just add to your family, Lei. Just add somebody to your family, and it'll be, the R1 will be perfect.
No, and they had a guy that did a walk around, talk about the different features of the R2, and my understanding and my sources are indicating this could be supplied with the Goshen battery out of Illinois. And remember,
well, it makes sense. It makes sense,
right? R2 will be made in Normal, Illinois, and Goshen was it breaking ground? I think it was like last September-ish. There was a factory that broke ground in what was the city? Something Mantino, Illinois.
Mankato?
Yeah, it was right. So think about that. And my understanding is Rivian would eat up that $7,500 credit with the it's obviously a Chinese battery. And so that will be interesting to see in 2 years' time. But yeah, so that's my kind of the New York Auto Show recap.
A really quick manufacturing or supply chain lesson here, logistics. I've mentioned this in past podcasts, but worth mentioning again since you brought up Illinois to Illinois. Now, every vehicle has what operations people will call, or material people will call, bad shippers. So an engine, for instance, is very heavy, very large, and it's limited. So trailers, over-the-road trailers, 53102s, 53 feet long, 102 inches wide, they are limited by the weight, and obviously they're limited by the volume. And so bad shippers are the things that weigh out a truck before it's full, or cube out a truck, meaning that they're too big. So the weight is okay, but they're too big and you can only get a handful of them on there. Packs are going to be too big. So cells would not be. You could ship them over the road, but there are different challenges with shipping cells over the road for long distances.
Yeah.
Certain highways, you can't transport hazardous materials, certain highways, and especially in other states. And so it makes sense for the cell factory to be very close, hence Austin, hence Fremont and stuff. And so it makes sense for them to be within hours of each other at the farthest. And so this makes a ton of sense that if they're going to be building the R2 in Illinois, that the factory is in Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, one of those neighboring states at the farthest. So just FYI. But
yeah, so
that's kind of all I had, man.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is for the coming 18-24 months, I would watch the SOP schedule of the R2 versus the how well and smooth that Goshen plant in Illinois would develop. That's what I would be watching closely.
Yeah, because they need to kind of be built simultaneously.
So that's all the,
with the Goshen plant actually probably being a bit ahead of the Normal, Illinois R2 production launch. So let's do this. Let's do this. We are at 9:52. We talked a lot today.
Oh, wow. Okay. Only 2 topics.
Yeah. If anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand. We'll bring you up. If you have any comments, feel free. If you're a little shy, you can leave a comment and we can talk about it.
And also, I think Kia is moving that Georgia plant schedule earlier, I believe. I think they're like SOPing in a matter of months in a Georgia plant.
Yeah, so that's the dichotomy, right? Everybody's complaining about how EVs have kind of fallen off a cliff demand, but Kia and Hyundai are just humming along, winning awards.
Yeah.
So it's good to be back at 9 a.m. and sitting in front of my desk again.
It's better for all of us. But next week, the numbers come out.
They're not going to be good.
Next Monday, April Fool's numbers come out.
So for those that celebrate it, happy Easter, happy Good Friday, and happy Easter. We'll kind of be back into our groove starting next week. I don't think Lei is traveling next week. I'm not traveling next week. So
no, except for China.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We will talk with you all next week.
Likewise, thank you all. Bye-bye.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lee, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.